Hello. This is the second podcast of 5 linked podcasts that take you through the key features of Nazi economic policy 1933 to 39. This podcast focuses on the new plan. You can see the strands there from the mind map that we'll be working through. Schacht and the issue of limited exports, trade agreement with the Balkans, and then an assessment of how successful the plan was. Okay, so in the previous podcast we highlighted the fact that Hitler had short-term aims and long-term aims. The long-term aims were very much about rearmament and preparing for war. The short-term aims, which were more open to the German people because they would make Hitler popular, were about creating jobs, and indeed that was the absolute the key short-term aim that Hitler had when he became Chancellor in January 1933. So, as you can see here, there's the key issue for Hitler. He had promised to create jobs for the 6.1 million unemployed Germans who had lost their jobs as a result of the Wall Street crash. So he appointed this guy here called Hjalmar Schacht. Notice the spelling, SCH and CH there, as a Minister for Economics. In the exam you don't really need to use his first name. I'm sure it will impress an examiner if you can use his first name. Just notice the fact there is a J in there as well. But the most important thing is you spell his second name correctly. Now the important thing is Schacht was not a Nazi. Okay, he was a very, very famous and respected financial expert. Famous because way back at the end of 1923 and the beginning of 1924, when Hitler was in jail at the time, it was Schacht, you may remember, who you may remember the Rentenmark that was created to effectively rebuild the German currency. Following the hyperinflation which had devalued the mark. Okay, so Schacht was well known across the world, and that was important as well. It was about giving people confidence in the Nazis. Many people in 1933 did see the Nazis as thugs, and they weren't convinced that they would be able to run the country. So putting a highly respected man in charge of running the economy was a very clever move by Hitler. It won him support at home, but also it won him support in other countries, in particular Britain and also France, but and definitely America as well. And Hitler needed to present a picture to Britain, France, and America that he was a reasonable, peaceful leader. But remember, that was the persona he was trying to put across at that time. Okay, so he gave Schacht complete power, okay, effectively like a blank cheque to reorganise the economy. His main brief, 2 things. 1, create jobs, okay. 6.1 million people unemployed, it was a big election promise. And secondly, to provide the people with consumer goods. There's no point having a job unless you've got money unless you've got things to spend your money on. Hitler realised that if he creates full employment, then the people will expect to be able to go to the shops and to be able to buy things other than basic commodities. That was something Hitler had to think about, because remember, in the long term, Hitler wants to use any wealth that is generated by the economy to make weapons to prepare for war. He doesn't want German factories, German businesses to be mass producing lots of consumer goods to keep the German people happy. That's not what it's about from Hitler's point of view. The reason German people are born into existence is to serve their country. But nevertheless, he's got to strike a balance there. He's got to, although he wants the factories to be mass producing weapons, at the same time he can't afford for the people to be unhappy. So the key emphasis there is on the word cheap. A theme we'll keep returning to. So Schacht's approach, what he basically did, and these are the key facts that you need to be putting across in the exam if you get a question on this, as it's very likely if you do get a question on the economy, is he set up what was called the New Plan, and that was introduced in 1933. It basically aimed to stimulate domestic economic growth. Now, I highlighted that word on Friday in the revision session, domestic. It's a good word. Domestic basically means anything at home as opposed to foreign. Okay, so it's stimulating economic growth. How did it do this? Okay, well, first of all, it tightened government controls over foreign currency. Okay, let me just explain exactly what this means. An economy is very similar to the way you or I run our own accounts, our own money. Okay, so we basically buy. We like to spend our money on things. Using an analogy here, if we were to go abroad, if we were to go on holiday, the first place we would go to before we go on holiday would be to go to a travel agents to buy some foreign currency. Okay, well, it's exactly the same with businesses. If a big part of any business is to buy and sell abroad for many businesses. Okay, so you may import, that's buying from abroad, raw materials, say, or manufactured parts, things that you can get more cheaply from another country, which you may want to use in your own factory to help you manufacture your own goods. And then whatever you produce, you sell, and hopefully you will sell abroad. Okay, so that's what we call export-oriented business. Okay, where you're buying and selling with other countries. Now, clearly, if you're going to buy anything from another country, you need to have foreign currency. And so any business, like you or I or your parents, when you go on holiday, would have to basically go to a bank to buy some foreign currency, which you would use then to buy goods from abroad. So you would use it for your imports, and import is where you buy goods from abroad. So Hitler very quickly latched onto the fact that if the government took control over the supply of foreign currency, that would be a way of controlling what German businesses made. Okay, so that's the point there. It meant that the Nazi government could dictate to German businesses what they could import from abroad. So Schacht's new plan was very much about bringing German businesses under his control. Now, Schacht's aim then was basically to use this to promote labour-intensive businesses. So effectively to ensure that businesses were buying goods from abroad which wouldn't slow down the creation of jobs. Because basically he wants the German business owners to employ lots and lots of people. So effectively, when a business went to the bank to ask for money, the question would be asked, why do you want foreign currency? Okay, and they had to justify it basically, and if they couldn't justify it, then they were not given foreign currency. So it was a way of controlling the way German businesses worked. German businesses were still privately owned, a businessman could still make profit, but it was a way of bringing them under the control of the German government. Next, the new plan also made trade agreements with poorer countries in the Balkans to supply raw materials to Germany in exchange for cheap German goods. Okay, now the Balkans are these countries in southeast Europe, countries like Romania, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Greece, Albania. Those countries they're in Germany's back garden, so to speak. Poor countries, they want to create trading partnerships. So basically, Schacht set up agreements with these countries on terms that were laid down by Germany, and a lot of it was basically we will trade with each other, but we won't actually use foreign exchange. So that was a way for Germany to save valuable foreign exchange as well, also part of the new plan. Because Schacht didn't really realise this, but another reason for doing this is all these countries lay to the east, and of course, as we know, Hitler's big plans were to invade east eventually, and that paid off 7 or 8 years later. Most of these Balkan countries, because their economies were tied to Germany's economy, effectively became German allies in World War II. Okay, so was it successful? Yes, in many ways it was. Schacht, as I say, was a wizard when it came to running economies. Germany's production was up by 50% on 1933 in 1935, so learn that figure. By 1936 there was nearly full employment, but in spite of that, remember, Schacht effectively was sacked in 1937. He was successful, but he was useful to Hitler for his short-term plans, but because he was not a Nazi and he could not be trusted with planning the Nazis' true long-term aims, which was preparation for war. Remember, Schacht did not believe in war. He was not in this for rearmament. That wasn't. He didn't believe that that was his role. When Hitler revealed the fact that all of his economic plans were about preparation for war, and he did reveal that in 1936, Schacht protested, and he was then sacked. Okay, so those are the key features of the new plan. There is a quick factual test. Remember, in the end, in the exam, you have to give precise information. Okay, you can't talk in general terms. You've got to be very punchy, put your points home very, very quickly, and back everything up with precise facts. So there are just 6 precise facts. On the next slide, there are the answers. So you can quickly use this to test yourself. Just press pause and then press play, and you will see the answers. So there are the answers. Okay. Next podcast, we'll move into what happened after Schacht was dismissed. In other words, the 4-year plan led by Hermann Göring.